Hi everyone, my name is Federico, and for today's live stream, there was this question that Trevor asked on Facebook, or actually it was more than a question because he actually started building a project. And so he was making a box that has a wide base, like here, and it uses slots instead of finger joints. So I thought that was a cool project, and this is something that has been requested in the past. And so I thought it'd be nice to like kind of work on it and kind of make a variation on the regular box to make this version, which I think it might be useful in other ways. So let's check out the templates. And I think instead of, let's go to laser cut boxes. And there are two options to do this project. One is to start with a finger joints kit, which is doable, but I think it's a little easier to start with a sort of regular box. So I'm going to start using the open box with finger joints as my starting point because it has already a lot of things kind of built in. And so a quick, before I modify it, a quick kind of run through how this works is that you can choose the width and the depth of the dimensions of your box over here. You can choose the material thickness and then the curve to get the sort of nice tight fit. And then you can download an SVG to build the box. There are a few videos on how to assemble these boxes, how to make them. And so I'm not gonna like go super deeply into that. But what I do wanna do is kind of review a little bit how the finger joints and slots work. So I'm going to start by, actually, the first thing I'm going to start by making a copy of these. But like the first thing I did was to actually cut a box out of some MDF I had lying around. And so these were the settings I used. And I also made the curve a little smaller so it would be a little easier to assemble. So I just did a 4x3 by 1.5 box just to show you really quickly and compare it to what we were going to be doing. So I can always, download the SVG, and then we created this kind of assembly view, and so this is, I cut one of those just to show you how it looks. So let's see, how is that? Front, back, right, left, and so it looks like these, and the idea is that you would assemble it like so, like you put these two. Then the back goes here. It's going a little bit easier because I made the curve a little kind of looser so I could easily assemble things on camera. So that is your basic box. And so we're going to be making a variation on that. So let's go back to so I'm going to open these in the Cuttle editor. And every time you're making a remix or a change on any of these boxes, you want to copy this project. So you get this prompt down here. So you click on that, and then that saves a version of the project to your private folder. I'm going to change the name. I'm going to give it I would call it a white base for now. And so just a quick review on how this works. The way these boxes are assembled is that you create, let's look at the bottom, for example. There is a rectangle that is sized appropriately here by inner width and inner depth, which are parameters that are created. And those are driven by this width and depth. And then to that one, a modifier is applied that is called replace edges. And so that replaces the edges with the thing, the specific component specified here. And so if I create another component, I'm just going to create another component to show you an example. So if I were to make like a simple rectangle that is like a 1x3, let's make it 3. There are two ways in which I can like create a box. So the idea is that you have to have edges that are the same length. So here I created 2 rectangles. And so you can always like drag your finger joints like so and attach them to the corners. They have like these handles. And if I attach it to the corner, this is the regular finger joints. And then there's one called finger joints outer. And if I attach it to the corners like so, because they're the same distance, they should match. So if I were to union these, Boolean union, these two would kind of perfectly match each other based on the material thickness and curve parameters. So that's one way to do it. And then the other way to do it is, let me just undo what I just did. So instead of like dragging and placing it there, the other convenient way to do it is to use that modifier. So for example, if I take this one and apply this modifier that's all the way at the bottom here called replace edges, I get, let's close this here so it's more visible. I get, when I select replace edges, I get these parameters here. So they can be a line, or there can be something like finger joints. Or a line means like it's not replaced by anything, so it remains like a single edge. But if I just call it finger joints, it replaces every edge with the finger joints. And I could do kind of like the same here. I'm going to apply the same replace edges modifier, and instead of finger joints, I'm going to put finger joints outer. And that's like a really quick way to create those. And I actually cut them to show you something important, which is, this is the finger joints outer and finger joints. And so the idea is that those are matching elements. So the finger joints go into the outer like that. And that's kind of like how we quickly create them. So that was a little bit of a review of the way it works. So we can like go ahead and make modifications. I guess the next complicating part is that the finger joint slots work a little bit different. So just as an example, I'm going to create another rectangle here that is also 1 by 3, a 3 by 1. And the slots work a little bit different. So let me compare. So if I put finger joints, you can see how the corners, the finger joints kind of grow past the edge of the rectangle. But if I were to put the slots, notice how the slots kind of land like right in the middle. So that's a little bit different. The way they're built creates this kind of need for an offset. And so, for example, if I move the offset here over the slots, I can move it in. But then I sort of have to like account for that. So I can also use the slots as with the replace edges, the same way I did here. So let me delete these and then delete these. And so let's try with the replace edges. So select that, go to modify, replace edges. And instead of line, I'm going to type finger joint slots. And so this is another way in which they operate a little bit different, in that like once the edges are replaced by the slots, then we only get the slots. We don't get a rectangle that gets cut. And so we need to add that rectangle. So the one easy way to kind of add that rectangle is to create a separate rectangle that may have the same dimensions. So I did a 3 by 1. And notice that that rectangle just kind of lands in the middle. So I need to expand it, or I need to make it a little bit bigger. And so the easiest way to expand it is to use the expand or offset modifier. So I could do something like that. And so I think with the slots, you require like a couple of extra steps. So either you offset it or you create an additional rectangle. In this case, we're going to create an additional rectangle. So the way I just did. So another thing I wanted to do is, I don't want the round corners right now. So I'm just going to change this round option on the expand to miter. So that makes them like perfect corners. And so this is what that one looks like. So this is all slots around the rectangle. And the important thing to know here is that the thing that matches the finger joint slots, or the thing that mates with it, is the finger joints. So those should be there. And the same principles still apply. As long as the lengths of the rectangles are the same, then they should work. So this is 3 inches, and that started as a rectangle with 3 inches. And importantly, also the finger joints outer is not going to match, but you can see that the finger joints slots and the finger joints outer are kind of like sort of brothers, or they're like analogous in that like the slots land on the same place that the gaps on the finger joints would land. So that kind of gives us a clue on how we can start implementing things. So now that that's kind of explained, let's move on to like actually modifying the box that I made. So I think the first step is, as I said, that the finger joints outer and the finger joints slots are kind of analogous or similar. So that means that if we change the base of the existing box to just finger joints outer, that would be like the first step. I don't want to jump ahead, but so I'm going to go to the bottom section of my box here, the bottom component. And so I can come over to replace edges. And the thing I can do immediately is go ahead and replace this for finger joints outer. And that just kind of flips it. And I actually kind of did that right away. So I went ahead and cut this one just to show you. So here's the bottom with finger joints outer, and here's the box I started with. And if I disassemble this guy, and I were to transfer it here, you will see that there is something that doesn't quite match, because these, the right is not going to match right there. The left is not going to match because they are, this is outer, 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 and outer. And that means we need to convert these bottom sections of each one of the sides of the box to finger joints, not outer, so we can get them to connect. So that's the first step. But luckily, we already kind of know how to do these. So I'm going to go into each one of these components and replace them. So let's see, I have the front here. I can select the replace edges, and let's look at this long list. I'm going to expand it so it's easy to read. And so remember that the way it works is that this line corresponds to these, finger joints outer corresponds to these, this corresponds to these, and this corresponds to this edge. So what that means is that I only, because I need to change this bottom edge, what I need to change is the third one, this one. So it changes just the bottom edge. So I'm going to go from finger joints outer to just finger joints. And that's it. I just kind of need to repeat the same thing for the back. So same concept. I think it's, again, is the third one, because this one corresponds to that. So let's change it. Finger joints. And the left as well. Let's go to replace edges. So this is finger joints. And then the right. And that should be the end of it. Over this part, finger joints outer. And so if I go and look at my assembly view, I can see that now they're matching. And that should replicate the thing that I just cut. So this is the, this is the previous one. This is the original one. So I went ahead and cut new versions of that. So what do we got? We got the back, the front, the right and the left. So now these two are matching. Now this box, just to validate that it assembles. It assembles. Hopefully I'm not going super fast, but so yeah. Is this working? Yeah. This one is a little tighter. Get more clicking there. So pretty similar to what we started with, but like this was kind of like a necessary step to kind of understand it. Let me take it apart again. So that validates the fact that like I needed the sort of outer version there. So now let's move on to the slots, onto making the bottom section into slots. So let me make this a little smaller. And then let's go back to that bottom component. So slots. I'm gonna duplicate the existing one just to make a comparison. So if I duplicate it, and let's make the previous one, I'm just gonna rename it so it's clear. Outer. And then this one, I'm gonna call it slots. So this one we're gonna leave as is. It's just all finger joints outer. And I'm gonna make it into guides, so I kind of preserve it. And so then with the slots, I'm just gonna change it to slots so we can sort of see what's the story. Finger joints, slots. So they are kind of overlapping each other, but you can see how the slots are not landing where the finger joints for the other sides should be. They're like a little bit in, which means I need to deal with that. But in this case, the offset, you know, I don't get access to the offset here on the slots one. So the better way to deal with it is to add the amount that they are offset by. So what I mean by that is that this amount is basically material thickness. So let me explain that. So if we look at finger joints, you'll see that we get, you know, if we attach something to these finger joints, they grow from the horizontal axis up by material thickness. So let me show you. If I increase the material thickness, you'll see how they grow up from that reference point. Conversely, the finger joints slots are like right on the center of that horizontal line. So when they grow, let me increase the material thickness. See how they grow sort of up and down. And so if we need to offset them by some amount, it needs to be like half of the material thickness, meaning like these half. They always kind of like get divided into, you know, half here and half here. But what did I just do? Too big, material thickness. Let's go back to the... So if I go back to the bottom one that we're working on, in order to offset it, I can change the size of the rectangle itself. So instead of the inner width, I can add the material thickness to it. So let me add it here. Material thickness. And you can see now that the width, meaning the direction in this direction, these two are now matching because it just grew, you know, I grew it by material thickness. And so that means I need to do the same for the height. No, sorry, that's the depth. So let's go back to slots and just so it's more readable. I can add material thickness to the depth. So you might be thinking like, why did you do material thickness and not half of it? And it's because it adds up. So it's half here plus half here. So that's like a whole material thickness. So that matches the outer slots, but let me hide the previous one. At that point, we only have the slots. So in the same way I did it with the first example, I need to create a rectangle that goes around that. So let's create that. So this one is going to be, the starting point is just going to be a rectangle without replace edges. So let me duplicate these. Get rid of the replace edges. So now I just have a rectangle, and the reason to duplicate it is that I wanted it to change. Like whenever I change the width and the depth, it changes accordingly. But now I need to expand it a little bit. And so the easy way to do that is to use the expand modifier, like the way I did it with the first example. So let me apply expand to that. So expand it. I kind of like the rounded corners, but let's do it with miter corners just to be consistent. And then the distance that we expanded, that is going to be what becomes a parameter that we can choose. There may be some calculations we can do here. For now, I'm just going to go with a simple, because like if I do 0 expansion, you see how that rectangle is not going to work. It's going to get cut in a weird way. But if I do something like, a 1/4 inch to start with, that seems to work in this case. And then we can make these parameters selectable, but in a moment. Let me show you the results of that. So this is it. So you can see, as I kind of explained before, is that the slots and the outer finger joints are like very closely related, or they're the same, but we needed to add that additional rectangle here to create this border. And so just to validate it, so this one now should work with those pieces I cut before, the same pieces that match the finger joints outer. So I think one reason to make boxes not this way is that they get a little bit harder to assemble, which I noticed once I cut this one. Because if you put this piece like so, then this one won't go in because you have to sort of like wedge it in. So the order of operations or assemble for this one, it seems like you have to assemble the entire perimeter. So all the edges first. Struggling on camera. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So you assemble the whole perimeter first, and then you have to like match it to the bottom. And that's a little bit of a kind of wiggling job. But yeah, maybe I did this with not the usual curve I do with my machine. I made it a little bit looser, just so I could struggle less on camera, but like makes me think that this box could use like a smaller curve. And so that's that. It works. I think some finishing touches would be nice on the template itself. But now that I made it, I can start seeing like uses for this one. Like someone in the comments is saying, like some boxes for like put it in a drawer. Yeah, I can see something. It'd be cool. It'd be kind of interesting if you kind of knew the dimensions of these and you can like create mating ones. The other thing I was thinking is that it could have like, a wide base and then maybe holes, so you could like mount it on the wall and have like easy accessible holes on the outside. I'm not sure. I know the person who requested this one had other ideas, but let's put a finishing touch on that template here. So the thing I wanted to do was that I wanted to expose this distance as a parameter. And so I'm gonna click on the 3 dots over here, extract it as a parameter. And what's a good name for that? I don't know, base flange. I don't know if that's descriptive enough. But then I can move it to the project. Move parameter to project. That means it kind of is gonna live with all of these, and I'm gonna move it up here. I'm gonna change the order. I don't know. It seems like the base flange seems like it should live with the other box dimensions. And I don't know. Quick tip: like sometimes you see how these have like different units that you can choose. In order to have those units show, you need to just simply type the unit here in the parameter. So if I type inches. Oops, sorry, just inches. Then this little unit selection just appears. So the base flange is 0.42. That's not like precise in that, like, if I do 0, that doesn't tell me exactly what the flange is from the edge of the box, but it just gives me a sense of what it is. So yeah, I would like to calculate that. That's not, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to move that. Yeah, that might be a thing for another one. But so yeah, now that we have the base flange, we can kind of select it, and then we can check that everything's working. The assembly view kind of got messed up. The cut layout view is working. Yeah, that works, because that one uses the auto layout component, which is kind of nice. So that one deals with the spacing. Yeah, maybe the assembly view can, I don't know. This is a little like spreadsheet work in a way, because the way this one is assembled is the location of this one is kind of determined by this kind of formula. So what is that? That means I need to subtract the flange base, the base flange. That work? Yeah. So same on both of those. Yeah, this is very like manual labor at this point. Plus base flange. I'm gonna do it. I have another minute. I'm gonna finish it so I can like share this template. So this one is minus. I do feel like making boxes is a little bit like looking at spreadsheets. You're like kind of hunting down what all these little things mean. And you're like hunting down like what matches what. And so yeah, I think that works. This is the assembly view. And if I change, let's validate it. If I change the base flange, yeah. That wasn't like strictly necessary. It was just like more of a nice to have. Yeah, so I think that that gets us where we wanted. One thing, yeah, I might want to do the one at some point with holes. I don't know if that makes sense. Like having holes in the corners, where like I can create something like a hole component, make a circle. I would have to create like a hole parameter, but I can start with just a circle, like something that fits a little screw. And then what I would do is I would place that hole component here based on the parameters that I used before. So that location would be something like, minus inner width divided by 2. And then, can I do this now? Anyway, you kind of get the idea. I could like place this hole and minus inner height divided by 2. No, inner width, inner depth. Yeah, so that place this is in the corner. Back to the spreadsheet work. And then I need to add the flange or something like that. I don't know, divided by 2 plus minus the base flange. I'm losing people here by the minute, but like we're almost done. So you get the idea. Now that hole should like be placed right there in the corner, and then after that, it's a matter of like I can mirror it, and then I need to place the other one for the bottom corner. I'll finish that later. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was useful. I'll be sharing both the video and this template later on, so you can like make your own variations on this box. I think I will make some variations myself. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye.